series centers on real stories, real lives, and how AI is showing up in business and in lifescape. Each word is familiar, often from childhood, but it takes on new meaning in a world shaped by AI hype, leadership pressure, and organizational change. This week, we're focused on the word advisor. More specifically, how is AI shaping our business services and offerings? I'm excited to have with me my guest, Julia Brown. She is an operator turned advisor and the founder of Teloscope Advisors. After leading operations in technology at Lower and living through the realities of automation pilots, change management, she now works with organizations to zoom out, assess, align, and implement change in ways that actually stick. Her definition. She also hosts the podcast Microscope by Telescope Advisors. Julia, thank you for taking time to join me today.
Brooke, it is a pleasure for us to turn the tables here and instead of me interviewing you, for you to interview me. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
It's one of those, I say, cups of coffee that we could, continue on through dinner, right?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. So let's just dive in and talk about when you think of the letters AI in the word advisor, what comes to mind?
I think the first thing is if we take a step back and we look at the difference between a consultant and an advisor, from my perspective, I'm really careful not to use the word consultant when describing my company or its services or how we participate with a company. Because when we come in to partner with an organization, we're not there to tell you what to do and walk away. We're there to stick it out with you and see it through tactical execution to make sure that the strategies that we're offering you are going to be effective. And so it's more of a partnership. So the first thing I think of when I think of advisory is a partner. You think of some of the most successful leaders in history, George Washington being one of them. Famously, he had a trusted group of advisors, amongst them Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. And
Right.
they personally were huge rivals, but through their different and various perspectives, opinions, beliefs, feedback, George Washington was able to figure out the melody line or the through line to help structure the US government in a way that obviously 250 years later, we're still enjoying the benefits of today. So intellectually, they were way ahead of their time.
Well, I was going to say, and interestingly enough, they didn't all agree on all points, but yet they were able to come to a consensus. And isn't that so common across organizations? And I'm curious as to what you think when you go into an organization and there's even, for example, in the context of AI, many of the challenges that we face as business are not new. And now we have these letters AI involved, right? That suddenly everything's all the hype around AI. What are you seeing companies can do differently, or maybe they should do the same in the context of AI in the business state today?
What's funny is as I've gone through and into various organizations, the human psychology component,
It's
especially
real.
in the mortgage industry, is
Mhm.
so strong.
Right.
And adding AI or implementing AI doesn't remove that piece. So a lot of the work.
That human component, it makes what we do part of being special, right?
Mhm.
Because in my experience, this industry as a whole, we care deeply about what it is we do and how it is we're helping.
Yes.
So how play into that and share a little bit more around what you're seeing there.
Well, yeah. So from an AI perspective, we have some organizations that are quick to adopt. They're eager to be early adopters, but not everyone within the organization or the C suite is on the same page with that. And not everyone is at the same spot on their AI understanding journey, right? Or AI adoption journey.
Like,
So Brooke, I know you've seen this too. You might have an executive team, some of which have never used Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, LLMs, or other AI solutions. And then you might have others who couldn't live without it at this point. And so
right.
trying to find common ground and a
Balance.
threshold that will work for the organization can be difficult. It's no different than any technological advancement I think our industry has had, where some companies will adopt early, some companies will try a lot of different things simultaneously. I think what smart companies do is they figure out where they can leverage technology and AI to get the best return on investment. And one of the things I think about, Brooke, is like, for instance, if we are developing AI to replace a human, but then asking the human to double check the AI, from my perspective, that's not our highest and best use of AI as a pilot within an organization. We're just bloating the cost because we've got the cost of technology plus the manual check. Whereas there are a lot of easy, low entry ways to begin utilizing and leveraging AI within your mortgage ecosystem that help to add revenue or help to streamline compliance and these other things
And I
without,
think
yeah.
you bring up a good point in that the use case matters, right?
Hmm.
That and the use case choice matters on a number of different levels, in part the culture of the organization in and of
Yes.
itself, as well as the appetite of willingness to change and who's leading that charge and who's on board and who may need to be brought on board, right?
Hmm.
And the variables in relationship to the risk components as well. The common language these days is around agentic AI. I mean, at a personal level, I've always wanted someone who's just going to complete, right? Like if I had, two extra hands, wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, that's been a dream of mine for a long time. Agentic AI seems to offer that promise, but you know that there's far more involved with it than just click a button, hey, this works magically, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So what are you seeing there in how organizations are identifying their use cases in your advisory role?
As an advisor, I'm seeing a lot of companies leverage AI around sales enablement. I'm seeing a strong desire to help loan officers, branch managers, regionals become more successful in lead generation and lead management, as well as conversion. So, whether it's adopting technology that assists the loan officers in real time, coaching them on how to be more relatable to their prospective customers or the referral partners to convert those leads into applications, or whether it's serving up leads that might be eligible for a refinance based on certain criteria, doing outbound campaigns on behalf of the loan officers. I joke, amplifying their impact without them having to lift a finger. That's something that I'm seeing a lot of companies develop and build into in a way that is very low stakes, low risk of anything going wrong.
Way make me smile because I'm keyed into the AI words. Amplify is yet another one. We could here that this is maybe our next cup of coffee is amplify.
It's so funny because when I started my podcast a couple years ago, my idea was I grew up across the street from my grandparents in a 1,000 square foot ranch. And I would run over to my grandma's house weekdays, weekends, whenever. She was retired and she'd always have a friend over and they'd be drinking coffee and talking about something: the school board, the church, the basketball association, the garage sales down the street. But they always had an opinion on something and they freely shared these opinions. So when I started my podcast, my idea was it's like having a cup of coffee, but then making that conversation available to more people because I just found so much value in those conversations between friends. So I love
And
that
I
you use
love that.
coffee analogy.
Yeah, and how we are able to expand not only our understanding, but our acceptance oftentimes,
Mm.
right? When we were open to listening to why others think or feel the way that they do. My mentor taught me at one point that the teacher far outlearns the student if they're willing to listen,
Mhm.
right? And how I just love that's one of the things that I enjoy most about hearing the other alternatives, and especially around the AI component of things. There's vast debate on some of the highest levels of artificial intelligence and where is it going and what will the final outcome be and when will it happen. Those some of those underlying foundational technology questions, and I've come to terms with the fact that I don't have a strong opinion on it one way or another because some of the most brilliant minds in the world who have been studying this for their whole careers can't come to alignment on it, and that's okay because we as business owners, we don't need to know those answers today, but we do need to have much stronger reference and foundations moving forward so that we make decisions that are within our own risk profiles as identified by the institution and so forth, and the alignment with our culture and what our missions and so forth are to be able to help people lean into possible ultimately.
To lean in, to lean into possible is a really smart way to put it. And it's interesting because I remember sitting at a conference maybe 2 or 3 years ago. There was a presenter. He was presenting all over because I had seen him at a conference a few weeks earlier in another state, and he wasn't mortgage specific, but his company was on helping people get comfortable with AI. And I'm thinking like 2, 3 years ago, people were being paid big bucks to go on stages and say, here is how to enter a prompt in Chat GPT. And if you wanted to be more specific, change these couple things. If you want the tone to be more formal, do this. Like truly things that today aren't relevant to the
Yeah,
conversation.
they aren't as necessary, right? They
Right.
still matter in certain cases, but they definitively are not as critical as they were 2 years ago, no question.
That's right. And even like last year or 2 years ago, there's another gentleman I know, incredible, who would stand on stage and say, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows AI is going to take your job. And his message is now AI is going to take some jobs. How do we keep you marketable so it's not yours?
Right.
And the speed of evolution with AI is just so fast. I wonder how you address that with your clients to make sure that they're at the forefront and where they want to be as it relates to how quickly these iterations are occurring within AI.
I think that's one of the foundational tenets of the shift with artificial intelligence is we not only as business owners, but as humans, we're
Mhm.
not really necessarily wired for the speed with which things are changing now. And unless you're in it every day, there's not really any reason to have context for what that actually means, right?
Mhm.
I was listening to a session a couple of weeks ago with Dario Amodei from Anthropic, and what he was speaking to the fact of the rapid technological change. He in essence, it's like it's one thing for me to say it, it's another to have him be talking about the speed with which things are changing. And he went on to give this stat that said that computational power is increasing at a rate of 50% every 4 months. That imagine in essence when you and I talk about what was happening 2 years ago and in fact what's happening today, right?
Mhm.
So, I think the number one piece is just that, heightened awareness in relationship to how quickly things are changing, and then the methodology and the use case of whatever choices are being made to have a reference point for what might the impact be in relationship to the rapid evolution. And how does that influence your decisions and ultimately be educated and be conscious of those potential impacts? And again, each use case is different, but I would also say that one of the caveats of what I've taken away from my own learning is that whereas I used to I was in essence schooled over time to you make longer term contracts, your pricing is better for an extended contract.
Sure.
Well, in the context of what we're speaking of, that may not necessarily be the best choice to make. And it also goes to the senior leadership level of we like to think that we've made a choice, we've implemented the solution, it's checked off, it's now finished. This regular iteration of review, because of the rapid change, is also part of the equation.
Yeah. And I think that's like where you and I meet because you have the technical background and understanding of AI. You've done the schooling, and I have the change management background and the
Right.
human psychology piece. And strategically, we're both advisors for organizations within the mortgage space, but the human piece, the iteration piece,
Mm.
you're right. We are wired to say, we did that. Let's check the box and move on to a new problem, right? Like, what's the new problem we can solve? That would be the fun thing to do. But seeing through what we're implementing and iterating on it, I think Google, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think Google has something like 179 iterations or something like tech companies are always iterating, right? And so we don't get to check a box to say, okay, we solved that. We're done with that. Let's not worry about it again. And mortgage, which is difficult because there is ever increasing complexity in the way that we originate loans. And I think that that is something that's very interesting too, from a policy perspective with the technological advances with AI and automation. Is there a world we could get to where things are simplified instead of being made more complex for mortgages?
Yikes. I think you bring up an excellent point, and in part that I think we have a responsibility to make it as simple as humanly possible for the front side of the equation, while respecting and understanding that behind the curtain, there are far greater complexities that need to be considered. so that our solutions aren't necessarily just a headline driver, but they actually drive significant change behind the scenes. So it's a marriage in essence between those two, and how we serve those that are need our services, whether it be you and I in an advisory role or whether it be a lender directly to the consumer. How do we bring them and help them where they are? And just as an interesting side point, I think it's worth noting that while we're so focused on the letters AI, not every group is interested in deep technological advances. And depending on those that an organization is serving, having dual processes to
Hmm.
be able to serve people in the manner in which the consumer wants to be served.
Sure.
Again, there's all variations and mixes of that, and some organizations can go completely one way or completely the other. But I think it's worth speaking to in the context of the strategy of an overall AI undertaking. What are we going to do with those who may not want to jump into that pool?
And this is maybe a crazy idea, but I've had this idea for a while now. How cool would it be if I'm a borrower and I want to buy a house and I go and I get my work number VOE, which I can get for free online, and I pull my credit through, one of the agencies directly or Credit Karma or something. I get my credit figured out, my bank statements, I've got all this together. I've got the data, it's packaged up, and there is an AI solution that can give, a statistical probability of my likelihood of default and whatever the case may be. It packages up me as a borrower and
Mhm.
then puts me out on the open market to maybe 20, 30 different lenders. And I don't have to talk to anybody. We don't have to do an online application. You've got what you need. You make me an offer. And then I decide which lender I'm going to choose and work with based on the offers I receive. I just think from a consumer's perspective, maybe not from a lender's perspective, because it gets very rate driven, right? It gets very price driven then. But from a consumer's perspective, I think that'd be a really fun thing.
You're making me smile because I would say, well, I don't think it's necessarily a crazy idea because I happen to know a few people who are working on segments of that. So, you're not alone in your thought. And I think to your point, it also comes back to some people would really embrace that. And for example, we have a daughter who's in her 20s,
Mm.
and she would be much more inclined to embrace an idea like that because she often reminds me, "Mom, AI isn't new to everyone. I've kinda had it."
Yes.
Right? So as generations come up that curve, some of the things that are more foreign to those of us who have done it, I refer to it as the OFW, the old-fashioned way. I think we're in that blended category now, but as
Mhm.
technology continues to progress, there will be fewer who have the reference point for the OFW. Well, Julia, thank you. Oh my gosh, as usual, our time has quickly come to an end. And, I often speak about AI in terms of lifescape, which is AI everywhere all at once, whether we realize it or not. And I like to close on a fun or helpful note in how you're using AI, whether it be in your personal or your work world. What do you think?
Okay, I'm going to give you three, but I'll make them quick because I know we're out of time.
Love it.
I know the attention spans of our audience is probably right around 15 minutes. The first one, a couple years ago, I hosted some European soccer coaches in my home for my son's soccer program. And I used AI to come up with a grocery list and recipes that they would like based on them being a certain age and a certain lifestyle and being from the Netherlands and Belgium, respectively. And when they came to my home and they had these food staples here,
That
they
they were familiar with, right? They
they
were
said, "Oh my God,
familiar.
this is the first host family we haven't gotten sick eating with because Americans put sugar in everything." They said, "Your bread tastes like dessert, like there's sugar in the drinks, like everything tastes like sugar." So that was one thing. So I think culturally it helps to bridge the gap sometimes if you're thoughtful enough to apply it.
I love that one.
Right. Second one is I last year put in a stamped concrete patio. And, when they come out, they give you this whole booklet with like 50 different colors and 50 different stamping patterns that you could go with. And I really felt overwhelmed by how many choices I had. And so I put into Chat GPT my top three with a photo of my backyard and the area. And I asked it to create a graphic of what my my area would look like with each of those three and these different color options.
Gave you the visual, right?
And it made it instantly clear. I went from it could be any of these three to it's this one.
Well, that's fun. That one resonates with me because I'm a very visual person. It clarified things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think the third one was just I asked AI to do a 30-day confidence building program, like quick conversations I could have in 5 minutes or less with my 10-year-old every night for 30 days to help build his confidence and his self esteem.
Lifescape,
Yeah.
right? Here you are using a tool that can be business or personal and you help him, which is that's awesome. What an awesome note to close on. Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
for tuning into Possible.
Absolutely.
Uh, awesome. We will talk again soon, Julia. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Brooke. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.